Scaling specialty instant coffee isn't just about making more of the stuff. It's about making smarter decisions on how to, where your time's gonna go, where your money goes, and the risk that you're willing to take. And trust me when I say, the maths on paper never tells the full story. Today we're talking cost of scale in specialty instant. Let's get into it. When I brew espresso at around 10% TDS, I know exactly what to expect. From 21 litres of espresso, I get just over 2 kilos of freeze-dried instant. That means for every 100 kilograms of roasted coffee that I use, I'm bringing back about 18 to 20 kilos as instant coffee. And once the espresso has been brewed, I'm basically seeing 100% recovery of those dissolved solids from the freeze dryer. So if the espresso has 2,100 grams of coffee solids in it, I'll get 2,100 grams back as instant. It's super simple. But that's my baseline. If I want to push beyond that, if I want to get more solids in less liquid, I'll need a higher concentration, something closer to like 22 Brix. And that's not something that I can brew here in my warehouse. My setup maxes out at about 10% TDS before negative attributes start to affect the end product. And that's everything that you've seen in episode 2. So when I want to explore those higher strength extractions, I send my coffee off to my brewing partner who can brew to that concentration. But that's exactly where the next layer of cost and recovery comes into this whole thing. Now here's where it gets tricky. You'll hear me talk about Brix instead of TDS in this episode, and I'll be completely honest, before I started making instant, I'd never heard of Brix either. It actually comes from the wine and the juice industries, but for us here, it's exactly the same idea. We're just measuring dissolved solids. The catch is, these scales, they're not quite identical. 22 Brix doesn't equal 22% TDS. It depends on the refractometer and how it's calibrated, but 22 Brix, it actually works out closer to 18 to 20% TDS. So when you hear me say 22 Brix in this episode, just think of it as a super strong brew. It's really just double the concentration of espresso. It's like caffeine diesel. It's so thick and syrupy, this stuff. And on paper, that should be amazing. If the espresso gives me 2 kilos of instant, then the 22 Brix concentrate should give me closer to 4. So I ran a test. I sent 2 of my roasted kilos off to my brewing partner, and they sent back to me just half a litre of concentrate. I'll leave that conversion to you to think about for a sec, but with that concentrate, instead of receiving 100% of the dissolved solids back, I only got back about 72%. That's a really big drop, but I think I know why. Because I had such little liquid to work with, the trays were really shallow, and shallow trays always tend to exaggerate the losses. The top layer of all of my sheets becomes a different color and consistency, and some of the material also sticks to the tray as well, which makes the recovery from the batch just look terrible. But with a full tray, that exposed top layer becomes just a much smaller fraction of the mass of the rest of the batch. So a full scale run of concentration might look much better. But that's exactly the dilemma that I'm in right now. Do I trust the theory and gamble on scaling it up? Or do I take that 72% at face value and maybe walk away? But that's the cost of scale. It's not just dollars per litre anymore. It's tray depth, it's the material exposure, and it's also the gap between what the maths promises you on paper and what the freeze dryer actually gives you. And it's not just me facing that gap either. I mean, it's everyone trying to scale something that was never really meant to be mass produced in the first place. But the reality is, if we want specialty to survive, it has to evolve. And that evolution, to me, starts with figuring out how to make this work at scale. Now let's talk about time, very important. Pulling 21 litres of espresso doesn't sound crazy until you actually do it. For me, that is over 5 hours over there on the machine, grinding, dosing, pulling shots, managing extractions, the whole shebang. And by the end of it, I'm wrecked, man. And that's even before anything else. That's before the freeze dryer starts, anything. So let's put a dollar value on that time. Call it 40 bucks an hour, and that's 200 bucks in labor. We add power costs, that's nearly $45 in electricity for the freeze dryer, and suddenly that batch is carrying hundreds of dollars in hidden costs. And here's the kicker. Every hour that I'm standing over there pulling shots is an hour that I'm not growing the business. That's the opportunity cost here. Now here's where it gets more interesting. Let's break some numbers down. We've got $22 per litre to brew my roasted coffee into a 22 Brix solution. Then another $20 to freeze dry that solution. The true landed cost worked out to be about 21 cents a gram, and that's before that material is even in a jar or a packaging or sachet or whatever it might be. Now those aren't hypothetical numbers either. They're based on very actual single batch quotes that I've received directly from a contract brewer and a contract freeze dryer. Both of those people are very close together in geographical location. Now, I cannot speak for any preferred supplier rate or any multi-batch discount that groups like Axel Coffee Roasters or Veneziano might have through much longer term relationships, but this is exactly what any roaster will be quoted if they're just walking in off the street. Now, at retail, those 60 gram jars that are selling for $40, they look quite healthy, but that's roughly 65 cents a gram. But the margin only exists if they are selling that product direct to consumer. The moment that they wholesale that to a cafe partner or a grocer, it might be 40 or 50% off, who knows? But they're lucky to break even once you add the packaging and the fulfillment and the freight and all that sort of stuff. So it is entirely possible that some of the biggest specialty roasters in the country are losing money on every jar of instant that they sell through retail. And that's not a criticism at all, that's a business choice. For them, instant is a halo product, a way to extend their brand beyond the cafe shelf and further into people's homes. And that's just not me wrestling with these trade-offs either. The biggest names in specialty are trying to find that balance between innovation and margin. We'll use Axel for the example. They've brought in one of their own, a world championship barista, into the development of their instant coffee. And it's a brilliant move from a storytelling point of view. It gives the product instant credibility and instant reach, just given who they are and the channels that they sell through. But it also makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is when a product carries that kind of star power, is it being built for profit or for presence? Because sometimes the value of something isn't in the margin itself, it's in the story that it tells about the brand. And that's the invisible line that we're all walking between what sells, what scales, and what's actually paying the bills. We built Full Spectrum's Instant to flip that equation really, is to make every single gram make perfect sense. We brew, we freeze dry, and we package all under one roof. There's no middleman, there's no minimums, there's no marketing write-offs or anything like that. It's just a sustainable way to scale specialty instant for real. Scale means outsourcing. My brewing partner charges $24.20, including GST, per litre for a 22 Brix concentrate. It's about 11 cents per gram of solids. We've got to add freeze drying to that at 22 cents a gram, and outsourcing a product comes in at 33 cents per gram of instant. Now, just to be very clear, all of these numbers are before raw coffee costs. So every single batch, it still has to start with roasted coffee beans, so we've always got that sitting underneath. Now let's compare outsourcing to in-house espresso, which is closer to 16 cents a gram once I include labour and power and GST. So yeah, outsourcing looks more than double the cost per gram, but you're buying back 5 hours of your life. And some weeks, to me, that's 20 hours. But here's the catch. If my 72% recovery rate holds at full scale, that cost jumps to over 40 cents a gram. And all of a sudden, outsourcing is no longer the golden ticket. It becomes your biggest gamble. Outsourcing does not shift your costs. All it does is just shift your risks. And deciding on what risks that you want to carry is all part of the cost of scale. But here's the thing about scaling espresso. It doesn't scale well. 1 batch is fine, 2 batches is fine, but 3 and 4 a week, mate, you're not running a business anymore. You're a production barista again. I even tried bringing in a mate, 30 bucks an hour cash. We shaved brewing down to about 4 hours, but to keep that going, I'd need him in 2 days a week just to give my body a break. And I realised very quickly that I'd rather be putting that money towards a machine that solves that problem permanently for me. But that's the tipping point. Do you keep pulling shots yourself? Do you outsource, or do you invest in better equipment, maybe something like a fully automated espresso machine to scale on our own terms? I'm not there yet, but that's the kind of decision that scale forces on you. Then comes packaging, and this is the part that nobody talks about. Jars sound simple. You can fill 30, you seal them, you label them, and then you're done. You do that once and it's sweet, but you do that at scale and it eats hours. Sachets, even heavier workload. I'm talking 500 to 700 sachets a batch. We've got to fill them, seal them, count them, box them. The labor there is relentless. I learned that the hard way. The first time I split a batch into jars and sachets for a client, on paper it looked really straightforward, but in reality, it doubled my workload. I spent more time packaging than brewing on that one, and it was then it clicked. Is that packaging is not just a finishing step, it's its own production process altogether. If you're not set up for it, it will swallow your margin before you even realise it, guarantee it. And here's the kicker on this one. Bigger doesn't always mean cheaper, unless you've got the systems to make it work. At small scale, every single hidden cost is going to bite you in the butt, but at real scale, at big scale, the numbers tend to bend. For example, if we package into sachets, the unit cost changes with volume. A small run, it might be 30 cents each, sure, which is up there, but a proper run of 10,000 drops the price closer to 15 to 16 cents. It's exactly the same coffee, it's the same product, but the scale flips the curve. Of course, the unit cost might fall, but the labor on that one doesn't. You've got hundreds or thousands of sachets, more like it, that someone still has to fill and seal and box. So that's where scale only works when the systems are there to support it. And here's the thing, sachets aren't just theory for us. We've been building those quietly in the background. They're the product that finally makes sense at scale. We said back in episode 3 that we'd unpack the yields, the fees, and the break-even points. This is that moment. Each batch right now, it gives us just over 2 kilos of finished instant. Production costs come in at about 18.5 cents per gram before packaging. We've got to add our jars or our sachets on top of that. But here's where the scale can start to shift the story. At 1 batch a week, you're not even covering your costs. You're paying for your energy, your prep, your clean down time. Push to 2 batches, you're close to being even. 3 or more, and those fixed bits, they start to flatten out, and that's where the numbers begin to working in your favour. It's the same setup, it's the same machine, it's the same people, it's just heaps better use of the hours that you have in the week. But that's the point where small scale, it sort of stops being a trial run and it starts acting much more like a professional production model. And that's when it finally makes sense to start thinking about expanding capacity. But not before, because that next stage of expansion is where things really start to get interesting. In the next episode, we'll show you what it looks like in real life. The equipment, the investment, and the moment that I stop being a one-person production line. So that's the real cost of scale. It's yield, it's time, it's outsourcing, it's labor, it's packaging, and ultimately, it's systems. Scale doesn't reward you for working harder, it rewards you for building smarter. And the sachets that we've been working on, I think they're proof of that. Hit subscribe to follow the build out in episode 5. We'll show you exactly how we're scaling up. And if you want to try the sachets for yourself, the early access link is in the description below. Thank you so much for joining me, coffee friends. I very much look forward to the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.